Good morning. It's good to be with you again this morning. And just again, as we build on the four pillars of a healthy Christian business leader, the four pillars are healthy relationships, biblical financial values, biblical spirituality, and balanced living. This week, we're dealing with pillar number 2, which is biblical financial values. And the series that we're dealing with this week is actually called How Much Should I Give? And yesterday we talked about tithing, and the question, tithing yes or no, is that something that we do? Good morning, Jeremy. Good to have you here this morning. And yesterday we talked about tithing. Today we're going to talk about giving is between you and God. So that's the focus this morning. Giving is between you and God. Jesus says, when you give in secret. And he says, to the point that your left hand does not know what your right hand is doing. And that's a pretty strong statement of secrecy. Now, when it comes to the reality of it being between you and God, the Apostle Paul writes this in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6 through 11. And I just want to read that for you at this time. He says this, now this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always, having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. As it is written, he scattered abroad, he gave to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Now, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in everything for all liberality, which through us is producing thanksgiving to God. Now, there are four things I just want to kind of talk about in relation to that passage that he mentions here in this first, 2 Corinthians 9, verses 6 through 11. The first thing is this, you determine in your heart how much to give. Now again, so oftentimes we think of the heart as this place, and the heart is kind of like, the center of emotion. Which I always find interesting, because biblically that's not what the heart is. The heart biblically includes emotion, but it's predominantly the mind. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he, the scriptures say. Jesus says, as a man, from when a man speaks, it defiles him, because it comes from what? It comes from the heart. It doesn't come from here. It comes from what he thinks, how he thinks, and that's why it defiles him. And so that's kind of the emphasis, when we talk about the heart. So when we're talking about in this passage, when Paul says that you determine in your heart how much to give, it's not an emotional reaction. It may involve emotion, but it's not an emotional reaction. It literally is the idea that I have thought it through, I've determined in my mind what is the right amount to give, and I've made a commitment to give that amount. And so that's the first thing. The second principle, of course, that is also seen here is that the sower and the sower principle, and it's a reality. The more I sow, the more I will receive. I've done enough gardening to know that if you plant one seed, you've got a chance that one plant will come up. But if you plant 2, you've got a chance of 2. And if you plant 100, then you've got a chance of maybe 50. I'm joking, but the reality is the more you plant, the more you sow, the more you will receive. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, because some people say, well, if you give $100, then God's going to give you $1,000 in return. Well, the scriptures do not teach that ever, anywhere. So it's not about monetary gain. It's not about, I'm going to give to the poor, I'm going to help out, I'm going to do these different things so that I can get money in return. That's not what this is about in any way, in any shape, or any form. It's about spiritual blessings. It's about knowing that I'm doing the right things between me and God. And so I'm not giving to return. In fact, another passage, Paul talks about that. And Jesus teaches that in Luke, I think it's chapter 6. In fact, I think this past Sunday, the sermon that our pastor preached on was just on that particular passage and dealing with the fact that you don't give to receive back. You know, that's not the purpose. And so it's not about that, and that's not what this principle is teaching, but it is teaching that you will be blessed by the Lord if you are faithful in giving. And the more that we're willing to give, the more God, in essence, will bless us, spiritually speaking. And then God will bless you, you know, with the ability to give. And that is also true. And I've experienced that myself. My wife and I have a ministry that we've had for pastors and their families called the Shepherd's Lounge. And we've had occasions where, and that ministry was a ministry that we would make vacation available to pastors who couldn't necessarily afford it. And we had a pastor call us one time, and he needed to get away and had no money. And my wife and I, we agreed to send him, and we made it available to him, and he could go. And I think we sent him down to Florida, and he went there for a week at our expense, and we paid. And we didn't have the money for it. But we stepped out in faith. We paid for it. We put the money out there, and within you know, before he actually went on that vacation, because you had to pay the money ahead of time, God had provided for us the funds that were necessary for him to be able to go there. And we put it out, and then God provided for us. And so there's been numerous occasions where I've experienced that kind of reality, where God blesses so that we can give. And that's another part of what this verse, what this passage is saying, that God will supply your need, not so that you can hang on to it, but that you can use it. And that's my fourth point is don't hoard God's blessing. You know, when God blesses you with financial gain, don't hoard that. Don't hang on to that as if that's yours. God blesses us so that we can give. And this passage teaches this concept that God will bless you so that you are free to give. And the problem that we have in North America far too often is God blesses us and we use it to, in essence, bless ourselves, rather than God blesses us with the ability to give, and we give. Instead of that, we say, oh, God's blessed me, so I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy that. And again, I think the scriptures are not saying never to buy anything for yourself. But this week we're focusing on giving and how much to give. And one of the things I want to really focus on is the fact that when God blesses us, he blesses us with the intent that we would be able to give to others. And so I encourage you. So today, as you go about your day, have you determined in your own heart what to give? Have you determined that? And if you have determined that, are you being faithful to that? Or are you just simply giving based on how you feel in the moment? And I just want to say, it's okay occasionally to give as you feel in the moment. But this particular passage teaches us that we need to also have determined beforehand what we're going to give. And then there's going to be the occasions where, you know what, God moves us and we say, you know what, I really feel I should give to this. But that's over and above what we've committed in our hearts to give. So may we make a plan to give. May the Lord bless you. Have a great day.